Hello and welcome to Food Safety Fridays. My name's Simon Timperley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. Today's topic is sustainability in the food industry, and today's guest presenter is our good friend David Rosenblatt. So welcome, David. Nice to have you along today. How are you doing?
Hello. Hi. How you doing, Simon? Hello, everybody. We're doing great over here.
Very good. And where are you joining from, David? Just remind us.
I'm in Israel right now. Just got back from Georgia, so I've been around, and now I'm from Israel now.
Very good. And as you know, I'm from Manchester in the UK. Tell us where you're joining from in the sidebar. My video's frozen again. I'm going to play the sponsors ads and we'll be back for a presentation shortly. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Hand you over to David. I'll be back for the Q&A later.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is David. For those of you who have never met me on one of these webinars, I am the head of learning and academic services at Share Consulting and Training. We are a Marionetry Sciences company, and we provide the food industry with consulting services, learning services, auditing, and so forth. And one of our strengths is our ability to provide services in the field of sustainability, especially sustainability in the food sector. And so I'm happy that Simon invited me to present this subject, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time on this Friday to whatever time it is where you are before the weekend starts to sit back and listen a little bit about sustainability in food and ask any questions you may have. And if you don't have time or I want to answer your question, you can always reach out to me after the webinar whenever you feel comfortable. We're always happy to answer any questions and be of any assistance. I'd like to start by saying I've been working in the food sector for 30 years this year. It's my 30th anniversary as a food safety and quality specialist. I'm a veterinarian by trade, and I've been doing public health and food safety forever. And since I started working years ago with Unilever, the company, it was the first company I worked for. That company, and I'm sure you've all heard of Unilever, it got me involved in environmental care. In those days, we didn't use the term sustainability that much. It's brought into a new term, but I was within a few months of me joining the company, I was appointed to a position that used to be called SHICA. That means safety. It's an acronym of safety, health, environment, and quality assurance. So the company put under one umbrella specialists that would coordinate the experts in the fields that are managed in the food industry by management systems. So we have our food safety management system, we have our employee safety management system, our quality management system, and our environmental care management system. And all these systems come together to the integrated management system, and the way the company manages those aspects of their business. And most of them revolve around risk. And I was with the company for 9 years. I learned a lot about environmental care and how to manage that. And then I became an auditor for the Stanford Institution, and I was a sector leader and senior auditor. And I did many environmental care audits. And then I joined the Share Group, and I've been with the Share company for the last 17 years. And we're excited to be part of the trend where what used to be regular, what we call environmental care, has evolved and changed and developed, and is now what we call ESG, or what I'll be talking about, ESG, environment, society, and governance, what we call sustainability. And a few months ago, not long ago, just a story that one of our customers, the CEO of a small food company, well, a medium food company, the CEO, called me up and said she wants to talk to me. We set up a meeting, and she said, listen, I know you guys are involved in sustainability. I'm doing okay as a CEO of this food company, but I have a feeling that I should be doing more with regard to sustainability. We're meeting all the laws and regulations. We're doing everything we should be doing, the government asked us to do, and we're monitoring our impacts as much as we can, but I have a feeling we're not doing enough. And I really want to do more, and I don't know where to start. I don't know how to tackle this big topic. Everybody's talking about global warming and waste and food waste and water and resources and biodiversity. Where do I mean, it's just overwhelming. And maybe you could give us some direction. And so this presentation is what I told her, more or less. What we do is we try to help organizations in the food sector, not many sectors, but mostly in the food sector, to try to manage their sustainability goals in a strategic way that fits their business. So what I'll be doing, and I'm going to start advancing my slides now. So what we'll be doing in the few minutes we have together is answer the question what sustainability is, why are we talking about it now more than ever, what it means for the food sector specifically, and where to start if you are asking yourself the same question that my friend, the CEO of the company, was asking herself. Where do we start? And just in one slide, how we can help as a consulting firm, if you would like that kind of assistance, or what to seek from other consulting companies if you're in touch with them, and try to get some external help. So that's our agenda, and I hope we have enough time to cover most of the information I wanted to share with you. So the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development in 1987, in the Brundtland Report, defines sustainability as a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their needs. I think that's a pretty good definition. And of course, we are talking about our needs, our current present needs, but we also want to do business in an ethical manner. And ethical business is a big deal. I've been working for years with many different kinds of companies in different areas and different parts of the food chain. And one thing is for sure, the vast majority of stakeholders that I meet want to do good business. They want to make a lot of money. They want to do well. They want to make their shareholders or the owners very happy. They want to make the shareholders and owners rich. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what business is all about. And good business. However, the one common denominator that most of these managers and owners or stakeholders have is they don't want to make dirty money. They don't want to do business and succeed at the expense of their employees' well-being and safety, at the expense of the public and the community, at the expense of the world that they're going to lead for the following generations. So that's what we call ethical business values. And some organizations, some don't. Some organizations don't have ethical business values, and they're cutthroat doing business, and they're not. And they have the place in the world, but they're not the audience for this specific webinar. The people sitting in this webinar, the people who are saying, I want to know more, I want to do more, because it's really important to understand that when we talk about sustainability in the food sector, we're not talking about meeting regulation. I will mention regulation. I'll give some examples how governments are stepping up and trying to enforce sustainability. But there is no doubt among the whole community that deals with sustainability and with ESG that truly it cannot be forced on companies. It has to come from the company's willingness to do the right thing, to be good human beings. And I think that's really exciting. And so most of what we do is beyond compliance. The compliance with regulation is the base. That's where we start, of course. And then we ask, what else can we be doing? So when we talk about what is sustainability, it's about a combination or connection or an overlapping between people, the planet, and the profit. So the business, our planet, and the people, our stakeholders. And that's what we call, in the professional terms, environment, social, and governance. So that's the ESG that we all hear about. That is what sustainability is all about. Everybody's talking about ESG. And the leading ESG topics, this is not an exhaustive list, but it is the leading topics for the food sector. What are we talking about? We're talking about things like, we're talking about environment, we're talking about climate change, deforestation, biodiversity, natural resources, water, pollution, waste, and so forth. Classical environmental care. Environment, since the 1990s and up till today and way into the future, can be well managed using management systems such as ISO 14001, systems such as, which is an environmental care management system, or ISO 10001, which is our energy management system. So we have management systems that we can be using for environment. So environment is a big deal. When we talk about the social aspects of sustainability, we're talking about human rights and fair labor, health and safety, diversity and inclusion, employee dialogue, development and empowerment, community engagement. There are also ISO standards that govern these agendas. We're all familiar with ISO 45001. That's been around since 2018. It replaced OSHA's 18001. And we've seen more and more ISO standards coming out for managing bribery, for managing employee rights, for managing bullying in the workplace, and so forth. These are all social aspects of doing business. And the governance part of ESG for the food sector includes things like ethical business conduct, responsible supply chain, transparency, responsible marketing, and product safety and quality. So we are now in a webinar that is hosted by the IFSQN, the International Food Safety and Quality Network. So we usually do this Food Safety Fridays. So some of you may be asking, hey, I came to Food Safety Fridays. Where's the food safety? And in this Friday, less food safety, but because I usually talk about food safety in my webinars. But yes, food safety, making food safe is a governance issue. So is animal welfare, food access and affordability, promoting health and food innovation. These are some of the topics that the food sector is dealing with in their ESG programs. So moving along, it's worth noting that in 2015, the United Nations defined what we call the SDGs. The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. You probably have heard about this. If you haven't, don't feel bad, but go online and Google the SDGs and learn about it, read about it. It is currently the most important world global initiative for saving our planet and our society. And there are 17 SDGs, where the 17th of them is the one that brings them all together. I'm just going to read them to you, one after the other, and maybe say a few words about them, and then we'll see how how these goals are to be addressed when we're talking about sustainability in the food sector. So, and by the way, just go back one. The SDGs were developed in 2015, and there are measurable goals going through to 2030. So at 2030, the world will assess how we've been doing for the 15 years that have passed since 2015, and what we have to do next. So this is an ongoing process. We're right in the middle of it in 2023, or approaching the last leg. And if you go onto the SDG sites and follow it, you can see where we are as a globe, as a race, a human race, where we are on these goals in different parts of the world. So the goals are no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities. So there's the sustainability. Responsible consumption and production. This is where the manufacturers come in. Climate action, life below water and life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, partnerships for the goals. How to work together as the human race across borders and across genders and across affiliations to make the world a better place. So these are actual goals that have numbers, and the countries that are part of the United Nations, the nations of the world, each one of the countries has made their commitment, and our part as industry is to join forces in order to try to meet these goals as much as possible, and if possible, exceed them. So the goals fit in with the idea of ESG, environment, social governance. There's some overlap, of course. For instance, when we're talking about climate action, goal number 13, it's relevant both for environment and for governance. And if we're talking about goal number 5, gender equality, then it's relevant for social and for governance and so forth. So we can manage each one of them according to the topic they fall under. So that is what sustainability is. And the next question that we want to address is why now? And I think we all know the answer. I'm going to tell the answer with some pictures. So this is a recent picture from the flooding in Greece, recent picture from fires in Italy, Sicily. So we are, as a human race, we are now currently experiencing extreme climate change, extreme changes in our planet that are associated with the effects of the human race on the environment. This is the Pacific trash vortex, a collection of plastic particles in the Pacific Ocean that has accumulated over the years, and it caused serious environmental damage to marine life. Deforestation is a big issue that we're dealing with these days, and this is a vicious cycle because, of course, a lot of the climate change is related to the change in temperatures, the temperature rising because of the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is an inequilibrium of our carbon emissions and other emissions, and the carbon balance that is so very, very important for life on Earth is governed between the living beings that use oxygen and produce carbon dioxide and those beings that use carbon dioxide and and emit oxygen. So that's the cycle of life. And the less trees we have, the less CO2 we can produce, and we're causing on the lands where the trees are missing, we're growing more animals, and the animals are consuming more oxygen and creating more CO2. So it's a vicious cycle that has to be stopped. So deforestation is key. Of course, as we have more heat and the weather becomes more extreme, we also have more forest fires consuming more forests. So we have more deforestation because of that. And also the forest fires themselves then also create more CO2. So these vicious cycles are something that are spinning out of control. So global warming has been predicted many, many years ago. But these cycles of acceleration of the global warming because of these phenomena that feed each other were not predicted as accurately as they should have been, and we're now in a situation where it's happening much faster than when we were taught back in the 70s and 80s when we were starting to talk about how we're affecting our planet. So our intervention is much more urgent now. Child labor should not be a problem on Earth in 2023, and it still is. And we have, of course, goals, and that's becoming urgent. And nutrition, we have large amounts of the population don't have enough food and are hungry, and the other part of the population of the world at the same time, we have too much food, and we're dealing with obesity, which has become an epidemic that's ruining lives and taking lives. So it's an absurd situation where we have not dispersed the food normally throughout the human race. And we can see that when we look at what the world is concerned with, and there's the World Economic Forum publishes once a year the Global Risks Report. The 18th edition was just published for 2023. And if you look into it, and I do recommend downloading it. It's, of course, you can read the whole report every year. It's worth reading. And if you open the report and look at one of the questions that they deal with is, please estimate the likely impact severity of the following risks over a 2 to 10 year period. And there's a list of risks, and people are asked to rank them, decision makers and stakeholders. And if we look at the results of the things that are most troubling, the 10 top issues for the 10-year period, this is the 10-year answer, we see number one, failure to mitigate climate change, failure to climate change adaptation. So we're not mitigating the climate change itself, and B, the climate change is happening, we're not adapting to it well. And natural disasters, extreme weather events, and biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse, all four, the top four are all environmental issues. Large-scale involuntary migration, and number 7, erosion of social cohesion and societal polarization. These are social issues. Natural resource crisis, large-scale environment damage incidents. These are, again, environmental issues. Widespread cybercrime and cyber insecurity, and geoeconomic confrontation is also issues that concern the world. So 8 out of the 10 major risks on Earth are environmental and societal. So why sustainability now? Why ESG is urgent? That's the answer. So the third agenda is what it means for the food sector, because the people in this webinar, what we all have in common is we all deal with food. So what does it mean for the food sector? And I'll share with you some numbers just to get an idea. So first of all, 33% of greenhouse gas emissions originate in the food system. So we are responsible, not we personally, but the food sector is responsible 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions on Earth. There's a 56% gap between the food available today and the food that will be required by 2050. And without seriously addressing this issue within not a lot of years, there will not be enough food to feed everybody. So finding ways to make food more efficient, more sustainable, making food more available is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with in our ESG programs. 34% of the food is wasted or lost. Food waste is one of the number one environmental impacts, besides being unfair, wasteful, unethical, because people are hungry and we're throwing away over 1/3 of the food that is made on the planet. It has an enormous environmental impact, because if 33% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the food system, just by stopping to waste 1/3 of the food, that can be reduced enormously. So food waste is a big issue, and we might dedicate a future webinar just to the subject of food waste, because there's a lot to be done. A lot of good companies and good people are doing a lot of good things to try to reduce the amount of food being wasted on Earth. And 70% of the world's fresh water is used for agriculture alone. So the food sector is taking a lot of the water resources that are not abundant enough. 86% of plastic packaging is not yet recycled. That's crazy. Plastic packaging that we're patching our food in plastic, and plastic is an unbelievable material. It has fantastic characteristics when we want to package food, for protecting it, for the message that we want to put on the package. It's beautiful, it's durable. It is really an amazing invention. We love plastic. However, there's too much of it, and if we don't recycle it or reduce its use, it's going to take over the planet. 50% of global land is used in agriculture. So again, the water and the land that we use for food has an enormous impact. So the food sector is very, very importantly involved. And so people may think, oh, sustainability, that's all about the big energy companies, the companies who do, doing with petrol, or the companies who do transportation, airlines, automobiles, and so forth. The greenhouse gas emission from food wasted, not food, but food wasted, is more than the emissions of all of the vehicles in Europe and the United States combined. That's mind-boggling. So our responsibility for the health of the planet is really serious. Now, governments have stepped up, and just a few examples, because there's a lot of regulation, and governments are saying, if the people aren't going to govern themselves, then we're going to impose some regulation, because we take responsibility as a government. And there are a lot of sustainability laws out there, and there are more coming. Again, only doing compliance with regulation is not going to promise a sustainable planet. Beyond regulation, beyond compliance is what we're looking for, but the regulation is important. Just some examples of how important this issue is. So in the EU has made a taxonomy for sustainable activities, and there's the European Green Deal, which aims to make Europe climate neutral by 2050. Reduction target of at least 55%, lowering 55% by 2030, compared to what we were doing in 1990. We have our carbon border adjustment mechanism that's worth looking into. There's the NFRD, the Non-Financial Reporting Directive, that requires large public interest entities to disclose certain non-financial information. So we're talking about reporting and disclosing information that's not financial, information dealing with sustainability issues. The CSRD, the EU's CSRD, the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive, the proposal extends the scope of companies' reporting, requires the audit of reported information, more detailed reporting requirements, etc. It is in its final phases of being phased in, and it has an enormous impact on companies that are active in the European Union. The UK has declared regulation for zero single-use plastic by 2042. By 2025, 100% of plastic packaging will be recyclable or reusable. And Britain is talking about zero CO2 emissions by 2050. Also, from April 2022, last year, the largest UK companies must disclose climate-related financial information. This is in line with the European Union and recommendations from the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, what they call the TCFD, which is the parallel to what the European Union is doing for disclosure of information that is climate-related. There's also the SECR in England. That's a streamlined energy and carbon reporting that requires reporting of energy use and greenhouse gas emissions for companies which meet certain criteria. Not all companies are obliged to do SECR, but the big ones are the ones who have an impact on the environment. The SDRs will provide a framework for corporations to manage sustainability-related risks, opportunities, and impacts, and set relevant metrics and targets. And full disclosure will be required by 2025. We're doing the same thing in Israel. There's a new regulation regarding energy management and disclosure, risk assessments, and managing what we call risks, opportunities, and impacts. Very similar to HACCP, the idea of going through the systems and doing a risk assessment and then trying to find which impacts are more important than other impacts in order to be able to focus our efforts on those that have the most that we can influence more. So it's similar. The idea, the risk assessment approach is similar to the approach used for HACCP to decide what is critical and what should be managed critically. Germany has declared net zero by 2045 compared to 1990 levels. They're looking at 65% by 2030. France, by 2023, companies will have to make publicly available the following: their greenhouse gas emissions of their products and services, and they'll have to disclose details about avoided reducer offset and the plan for greenhouse gas emissions reduction. This is all the French government. As an example, Spain has declared that by 2050 the Spanish economy must be carbon neutral. The bill on waste and polluted soils is dealing with fulfilling objectives set out by circular economic package directives. United States, there's a call for public disclosure of ESG risks. The executive order on climate-related financial risk that was signed in 2021 is being rolled out. ESG disclosure requirements from the U.S. The company's climate risk management processes have to be disclosed, how the risks identified would impact financial performance, how they're managed and mitigated, disclosure of greenhouse gas emissions, etc. And reporting will be finished by 2024. Also, this is a risk-based approach to climate risk management. The Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States, usually dealing with financial issues, are now talking about enhancement standards of climate-related disclosures. So companies who are publicly traded, the proposed rule amends that would require a domestic or foreign registrant, people operating in the U.S. or for the U.S., to include certain climate-related information that's registration when they go public, and also submit periodic reports. So these are some of the international regulations. There are many, many of them. Our company is very busy mapping these regulations, following them, following especially the ones that are in the pipeline, so that we don't awake one day and say, oh, we didn't know about this. So in order for people to be prepared, companies to have their reports in place when it goes into effect and not have to lag behind and then suffer sanctions. So our consultants are very busy mapping this and helping companies do gap analysis to try to see how they're doing and what they need to be doing more in order to be compliant with their specific government's regulations for their country and for countries that they export to. We take advantage of the fact that Merion Nutrisciences, our company, is a global company where we operate in almost every country on earth. And of course, on all of if we're not in a specific country, then we're in the area. And so we have the ability to be able to support food companies when they have to deal with their regulatory requirements and they're overwhelmed, to try to map that out and see if it applies to your company, to what extent, to what date do you have to submit which report, and so forth. So it gives some peace of mind to companies that are anxious about not meeting regulatory requirements. Also, it's worth mentioning when we're talking about the food sector, the consumer expectations, and studies have been done on consumer awareness when they go to buy food, and asking consumers when you go buy food, what is on your mind, and some interesting results. 23% of consumers expressed increased interest in sustainable food choices in the United States in 2020. This is a 2020 study. That is a lot of people. A quarter of the people, when they buy food, they want to choose food and take into consideration sustainability when they make their choices. 40% think the industry is to blame for obesity. And obesity is one of the issues that the food industry is being blamed for, which may be unfair because every single human being has the responsibility to monitor what they eat and how much they eat, and to blame the industry for some of the companies represented in this webinar, I'm sure, make food that if you eat too much of it, you will become obese, and they're not. And of course, we're being blamed because we want people to buy as much of our food as possible. And so, if our dream comes true and our sales go up and people eat more and more of our food, and it's food that's causing obesity, then we're up to blame for obesity. And this is something that we have to deal with when we're talking about our governance and how we approach. Are we also taking responsibility for the health of the consumer, educating consumers? Are we using warnings on our packagings to say, hey, this food is fantastic, it's really good, but please don't abuse it? This is something we're going to be talking about in the future more and more. One thing we can look at as an example, and not to compare, but still, the cigarette industry's responsibility for public health. And they said the same thing in the beginning. They said, hey, we make a cigarette. Everybody knows cigarettes are bad for you, but if somebody wants to consume it, that is their responsibility as a consumer and not our responsibility as the manufacturer. And the world said, no, you're wrong. You have a responsibility for putting the hazardous goodie out there and tempting people to consume it. So the cigarette companies are also had to deal with the question of how do we warn people? We want them to buy as much product as we can sell, because that's our business, that's how we make money, but we want them to do it responsibly. And they've had the same issues. If we want to migrate the cigarette industry, was not food, to the food industry, then the interim would be looking at the alcohol beverage industry, which is food, but it's also a drug. And alcohol abuse can be terrible. So the alcohol beverage community is thinking of the manufacturers are also dealing with, in different countries and different regulations, warnings on packaging, campaigns, taking responsibility, supporting responsible usage of alcohol. And the food industry is going in that direction of wanting to sell as much food as possible, but taking responsibility for safe consumption of food, because obesity is a major problem and it is caused by the abuse of the food we manufacture. 56% of Generation Zs consider sustainability at least most of the time while shopping. So this is also a good marketing incentive. If I have a product and I can show my potential consumer that I care, that I'm sustainable, that I care about the planet, then I will have a better chance of them buying my product. And what we're concerned with this demographic, this demographical statistic, is that companies will be tempted to greenwash. And greenwashing is when you make a show of being very, very sustainable, very green, very clean, very healthy, just so that people will buy from you. And it's not real. It's greenwash, like brainwashing is greenwashing. And so that's something we want to steer away from. We want to be sincere about our efforts. And I think that Generation Zs are smarter than we were when we were baby boomers. And they can look past our advertising and our greenwashing, and they know, and they can read a report, they can go online, they can go into the GRM, and they can see what companies are doing, if it's just greenwash or they're actually acting for the environment. 52% would like more information on how to choose a sustainable diet. So it's our responsibility to put the information out there and help people make choices. Sustainable diets are not just healthy and prevent obesity. They also mean that the ingredients are being purchased from sources that are sustainable, that we're not abusing forests, that we're not abusing communities, that we're not promoting child labor and so forth. We're not harming marine life, and there are many agendas that the food industry has to address when we're talking about sustainable diets. So, in the short time we have left, let's talk about how do we start. Okay, so David, you told us all about what sustainability is, why it's urgent now, and what it means for the food sector. Okay, I'm convinced. Tell me how to start. And sorry, I don't have an answer for that. I have a direction. There's no one way to start. We have mapped out 7 major efforts that should be on the agenda, on the table of the food companies. And these include biodiversity, waste management, inclusion and diversity, responsible sourcing and supply chain, deforestation, sustainable manufacturing and packaging, and transparent labeling and substantiated claims. These 7 topics should be on the table, should be on the agenda. There are many other ones. You pick and choose, but these are actually ones that over many years of working with food companies have become the most impactful for sustainability. And we're talking about sustainability management. So we've in the 1990s and then 2000s, we were working on making what we call quality management, and then food safety management, and then we learned how to do employee safety and well-being management. Now we're learning to do sustainability and environmental care management, and that has evolved to sustainability management. So it's a management system. It includes topics like sustainability strategy and reporting, environmental footprinting at the organizational level for the whole organization, life cycle assessment, carbon footprint at the product level. So we're talking about our footprinting as a company and the footprint of each one of our products that we make. And LCA is also an enormous subject, and we do a lot of LCA. That's life cycle assessments, taking a product that's manufactured and studying it from cradle to grave, or from cradle to cradle if it's going to be reincarnated and recycled. Let me take a sip of drink. So LCA is a subject for a whole webinar on itself. The technology available today to be able to do precise analysis of the life cycle is mind-boggling, and we can make really, really educated decisions now more than ever. I'll give you one example. A company may want to manufacture a meat alternative, an alternative protein made from plant-based, which is on the surface the most sustainable thing you could do. You're now not using animals, so there's no animal cruelty. The environmental impact of the animals we're saving, and so forth and so on. So at the surface, it looks like it's very sustainable, but we do want to know, is our product actually going to have a smaller environmental impact than the product we are trying to replace, that we're offering a substitute for? And to do that, we have to take into consideration growing of the plants and the water involved and the land involved and the manpower involved in harvesting and the what it takes to process it, and the processing factories and transportation and the packaging material and where it's manufactured, where it's traveling from, and so forth and so on. And the LCA allows you to put all of these hundreds of parameters into a computer program that now you can play with. You can tweak it. So for instance, if I want to lower my environmental impact, let's see what would happen if I use recyclable plastic instead of paper. So I put that information into the program. It will tell me how it affected the footprint. So it's more than a carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is a greenhouse gas emission. That's one of the parameters, but it deals with the whole thing. And finally, also standard certification. So there are many different standard certifications. For an example, IFS ESG check, where you get certification as you would get for food safety or for other agendas. I just wanted to, just as an example, to give you a feeling of what we do, I'm going to take the first agenda, sustainability and strategy reporting, and how we would approach that with an organization where we start. So there is no one way to start, but I'm going to give you an example of one of the ways. So looking at sustainability strategy and reporting, we'll do a strategy that includes, in the beginning, 5 steps. So we start with a benchmark. Okay. What are the trends of that specific food that you're manufacturing? What's being done around the world? Other companies, what are they doing? So we have the competitors and our peers, and we put together a portfolio of what other companies are doing. We did this recently for a juice company that makes fruit juices. So we mapped out 3 or 4 different juice companies around the world, what they are doing according to their reports. So now this juice company can see what the competition is doing and what the trends are. And then we will collect strategic data and goals as part of the benchmarking process. We'll map out the relevant regulation so that we have the whole and all the information in front of us. And then we can move on to studying the current status of that company. So the company first does the benchmark, then it maps out its current status. We understand the context of the organization, where they operate under. So companies may look at their production and overlook their warehousing and transportation. So understand the context. Are they also involved in growing? And how do they, and where is that involved? So mapping out the context, collecting data by first building an infrastructure of data collection. What do we want to know? What is happening now that we don't know? Do we know how much of every type of waste flow we're making, where it's going? Can we measure it? Do we know the amount of landfill waste, the amount of solid waste, the amount of wastewater? Do we know how much water we're using? Do we know how much energy we're using? Do we know what are our emissions in different types of emissions? So we're making a data collection infrastructure, and then we analyze this current status. So where are we today at time 0? So we can plan for the future. And then we do sort of like a HACCP. It's called a materiality assessment, where you take and define priority topics by doing what the best way to explain what a materiality assessment is looking at what has the most impact. Once we know what our status is and making our priorities, where should we be focusing first, and where will we be able to make the best impact when we start operating and start our project. So this is part of our strategy, the current status, and then next build the strategy. So now what are we going to do? Our statement, which is parallel to our mission statement or our policy, what we as a company believe we should be doing, and we make that statement that we're going to adhere to. Set our goals, both short and long-term goals, and then initiate the project using our governance project frame initiating, and going to work plan and project mode. So start doing what we decided to do, establishing a work plan to achieve goals, and now we're talking about actual work instructions, and not things that are up in the air, but who does what, when, what are our milestones, what are we looking at as interim goals and final goals, who's following it, and who is going in periodic meetings, and so forth. We create working groups, we train and support them, and share the work plans with interested parties. And finally, monitoring and reporting. Monitoring the KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators, as we would be doing for any other agenda that we're using. If it's employee safety or food safety or quality management, then we monitor our KPIs, our sustainability KPIs, and we write our environmental social governance report and communicate that to the stakeholders. And it's an ongoing process. Just a few examples of things that are going on in the food industry. I'm going to flip through this real quickly, so I want to leave some time for questions. But what the food industry is doing, just some examples. We can see PepsiCo has their net zero 2040 goals, 40% by 2030, recyclable packaging designs, biodegradable, compostable. PepsiCo is committed to improving water use efficiency with 25%, sustainably sourcing 100% of key ingredients. Unilever, similar aspirations, reduction of carbon footprint, 100% recyclable, reusable packaging or compostable by 2025. They are doing LCA for significant products. very strong on plant-based meat and dairy alternatives. They put 100 billion euro into that project to try to find these alternatives by 2027, and they're proceeding. 95% of packaged ice cream to contain no more than 20 grams total sugar, so nutrition goals. Ben & Jerry's, as a Unilever subsidiary, are very involved with governance and social issues, voting rights, racial justice, LGBTQ rights. So these are some of the also Ben & Jerry's are studying and investing in how putting cows on a diet can help fight climate change, changing because they're a very large milk consumer, how to change the food of the cows and add food additives in order to that they'll do less, they will emit less greenhouse gases, both in the food and also applying manure digesters, because we know that farm animals emit a lot of greenhouse gases, especially methane, which have an impact on the environment. Nestle, very strong, net zero by 2050, 50% by 2030, 100% recycled packaging reusable 2025. Biodiversity projects, 100% of their fruit and veg suppliers will have to be engaged in biodiversity. Animal welfare programs, 100% of animal ingredients will have to have verified animal welfare programs. These are all sustainability issues. More Nestle initiatives include better nutrition, reducing added sugar, reducing sodium, reducing saturated fat in their products, sourcing through regenerative agricultural methods by 2030, deforestation free for their palm oil, sugar, soya, meat, pulp, and paper. These are all, and of course, the coffee and cocoa. These are all sustainability examples that companies are doing. And of course, not only food manufacturers, we've mentioned PepsiCo, mentioned Unilever, mentioned Nestle, also Albert Heijn, which is one of the world's the largest retailer in Holland, reducing CO2 emissions in the supply chain, being climate neutral by 2050, less packaging material, expanding the vegan and vegetable range in their products. Marks and Spencer from England, net zero across the entire value chain by 2040, doubling the sales of vegan, vegetarian. Lidl, again, 100% of food and veg suppliers need to be engaged in biodiversity projects, same as Nestle. 100% key raw materials, verify sustainable sources, reducing plastic, increasing healthy foods. So the major players in the food market are all participating in sustainability and ESG programs. Walmart, if you go on their website, you can see their sustainability goals. Walmart is the largest retailer in the world. They're committed to zero emissions for their operations by 2040, 100% renewable energy by 2035, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and so forth. Nature, the Walmart Foundation is active in land conservation, protecting the oceans, zero waste, recyclable, reusable, and so forth and so on. And also people. So Walmart has a project for promoting good business practices to promote human dignity. So those are some of the things that the food industry is doing. And finally, as a consulting firm, how can we help? What we would do with our customers is what I mentioned before as an example and strategy. We learn the company, we learn the impact, the benchmark, the regulation. We help plan to define the agenda, set strategy, goals, and targets, and then we put into action and help the organization with the action plans, innovation technologies. And no two organizations are the same. It's highly tailored to what they're, and even if you do beyond compliance, one little effort, one little act or a gesture for our planet or for the people we love, that's better than what we're doing, not doing anything, or better than what we're doing now. So some companies, you don't have to be Nestle or Walmart in order to say, I am doing better for the environment. I can do more. What can I be doing now? Maybe this year I'll do one thing, maybe next year I'll do something else. But we cannot afford to sit back and just let things happen and hope for the best. It's not going to be better if we don't interfere. So that's my presentation for today. We have 5 minutes or a little change for questions. Simon, you back with us?
I am indeed. Hopefully you can see me this time. I keep having problems with the video, but still am to a certain extent, I think. So yeah, let's go through the questions, Dave. As long as you can hear me, that's the main thing. So, first question from Suhaib. Hello, all. My name is Suhaib. How are you? I have a question related to the food loss and waste in food manufacture. If a goal is set to reduce food waste by 5% per year, what is the plan or program and controls that will be applied to implement this goal in the food establishment? Are there any templates and references that you can help us with?
Okay, that's a great question, and it's very specific, which I like specific questions. When we're talking about reduction of waste in production, and 5% is a lot. 5% is, it seems to be a little bit, it's a lot. What we'll do is we'll map out the waste in production. So usually we'll work with an improvement team in the factory, somebody from maintenance, somebody from production, somebody from planning and purchasing. So I'll make with a mentor, and we'll use typical classical improvement team tools, collecting data. Where are our losses? Do we have leaks in our pipes that are leaking food? Are we leaking things in sieves? Are we losing things? What we call our how is our yield and where the loss is coming from? Are we taking samples for the lab? How large are these samples? And we'll map it out and try to do a Pareto and see where most of the waste is coming from. And once that's mapped, we'll be able to put into a plan how we can save some of that. Can someone maybe be reworked back into the process? Can we maybe do better tighten maintenance, have less leakage and less dust? It depends what the product is. Of course, if it's a liquid product, then we're talking about leaks. If it's a dusty or a solid product, we're talking about dust emissions and things that are coming out of connections between pipes, leftovers and mixers. When you finish a batch, how much product you have left over that's sticking to the sides that is then washed out into the sewer? Can we get better? Can we get a better yield there? Where are our losses coming from? So that's saving food in production. Of course, we'd also address the question: how can we get marketing to be involved as well? Because sometimes some of the waste is coming from. I know that wasn't your question, but I can't ignore the fact that sometimes marketing puts out a marketing plan to. I'm trying to be nice. To put a lot of product on the market to give an impact of market impact, the shelf impact, and they know that some of the product is not going to be sold. They just want to give that, and so they do a campaign, and they want the product to be known, to be seen, so there'll be a lot of shelf exposure, and then they know a lot of products are going to be returned and destroyed. Maybe work with marketing to find better ways to expose product without having to waste it. So that's also part of the manufacturer's responsibility. I hope I answered the question, Suhaib.
Yeah, thank you. Question now from Olu Keod. What is the relationship between food and packaging sustainability?
That's a great question. Right? Yeah, would you say something else, Mark? Because your mouth was moving and I couldn't hear anything.
It's the video. It's lagging.
Okay. So of course, the relationship is very close. And the packaging companies themselves, and I hope there are packaging manufacturers who join the webinar, because the packaging, as far as I'm concerned, packaging manufacturers that manufacture packaging for food are food manufacturers, by all means. I mean, we don't eat the packaging, but they're part of the food chain, and they should be doing the exact same thing we're talking about here. Of course, doing their strategy, mapping out how they can do less loss, whatever we talk about sustainability. The question is the relationship between the food industry and the packaging industry. So the people in the food industry who are in charge of designing and choosing the packaging have to work side by side with their packaging suppliers to try to reduce their impact, to try to be more sustainable. So that's an important relationship. And there are very good consultants, myself not included, because that's not my expertise, but I can refer you to people who that's what they know how to do. They know how to map out your packaging material, not to compromise the beauty of the product or its protection, or the way it's going to be presented on the shelf, but still find ways to package it more sustainably and try to find that balance. I'll give you an example. One of the pet food companies that I work with, they have a beautiful package of dog food that is made of a bag with smaller bags inside that bag to keep it fresh. And the consumers love that. I mean, the customers don't care. The customers love that. The consumers of the dogs, but because it's very easy to use, but of course there's a packaging burden there that they want to manage. So they're looking for a solution how to lower their environmental impact without harming the convenience of the customer and their sales. And there are ways to do that. They're finding out ways to make the packaging inside a little thinner, for instance, weighing less, and so forth. So there's an important relationship there.
Okay, got you. A long question from Ryan. Do you believe that the material world was specially created by a personal creator? Oh, wait a minute. That's not a question. That's just not relevant to the topic. I'm sorry. Right, maybe for another time, but not for this webinar. Prandeep, what's the possible actions of pet drinking water bottle recycling with less economic initiatives?
Okay, and that is the question that is too specific for me. I'm not an expert on pet recycling, but if you write me an email, I can connect you with somebody who deals with recycling of pet. There have been some really good initiatives done. A lot of the big beverage companies are now doing what they call recycled pet, rPET. They can't do 100%, but they can do a certain extent, and they've been studying and working with it, and we've had some connection with them, but I don't know enough to talk about it, so I don't want to.
Okay, so this one as well from Pradeep, the best environmentally friendly packaging material for drinking water, except PET cans and glass. Again, you're not.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is a question that I can answer, even though I'm not an expert on PET, because the answer is that would be a case for LCA Classic, because glass is more sustainable than plastic for sure because it can be reused, but manufacturing of glass has environmental impacts on itself that plastic doesn't, and so it becomes. And you can now a lot of people sell water in paper, in cardboard boxes. So what we would do in this case would take 3 or 4 packaging alternatives for mineral water, and then put them through the LCA and see which one is most sustainable, and get the whole picture. So that would be the answer. So it would depend on where the factory is, where you're sourcing the material from. So if you have an ability to do it in glass, but the glass factory is another continent, then you have to take consideration. I have to ship the glass to you. And if it's a cloth, so that would be the impact.
Got you. Okay, question from Dr. Ike Wu. What efforts are being made to reduce bio-emission in less developed countries and maintain environmental sustainability?
It would depend on the country and on the support they're getting from international NGOs. If you could be more specific, not right now, but if you want to write me an email and tell me the specific issue that you're dealing with, I could try to connect you with somebody who might be active in that country and have some information, because there's a lot of international money be putting into developed, less developed countries, developing countries helping them, a lot of initiatives, and it's worth knowing them to be able to see what you can leverage for the benefit of your business or your company. So it's very country specific.
Okay, question from Kimberly. Can you restate the statistic on the amount of emissions from food waste and what it is equivalent to? Do you remember?
Yes. Greenhouse gas emissions, 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions is coming from the food industry in general. 1/3 of the food being manufactured is wasted. So 1/3 of 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world is for nothing. There's no reason to if you weren't wasting the food. And the statistic that I gave, just to blow your mind, is that the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted due to manufacturing food that's going to be thrown in the garbage is equivalent to or exceeds all of the carbon emissions from all of the vehicles in the United States and Europe together. I actually have an infographic for that when I do my food waste presentation. So it's an enormous impact. We don't think of it intuitively, but I mean, just to make a sandwich, the amount of emissions involved in the bread and the filling and the people and the work that we just throw in the garbage if we didn't eat it that day and it's in our, we keep it in our briefcase, didn't have time to eat our sandwich, throw it in the garbage. That specific act, we are causing an enormous impact. Now, if we eat the sandwich, fine, that's justifiable, but we're throwing it in the garbage, that's just waste. So that's what we're talking about. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, very good. Very well. Christina, how can these strategies for sustainability be adapted by smaller companies that may not have the financial capabilities or technological resources of bigger companies?
Thank you for that question, Christina, because it's a really important question. And I spoke about it a little bit. You don't have to be PepsiCo to do better, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. A company can decide to do one initiative, work with their employees to do something, do some community program, anything. And many of these sustainable strategies are money savers. Many of them are money savers, meaning that, have we lost Simon? Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I saw your lips moving. Can you hear my answer?
Yes. Yeah. It's my video. Just ignore my video. It's not working.
So, Christina, many of the initiatives will save money for the company. And those are the ones we'd start with in order for management to get in, because it's easy to convince management to get on board with programs that ultimately will save money. And we can map that and see where there are wastes that are also harming the planet and also harming our pocket, especially when we're talking about food waste, which costs a lot of money, energy consumption, which costs a lot of money, water consumption, which we pay a lot of money for, waste management. So even small companies that have some expenditure that is associated with their non-sustainable behaviors can start there. So the answer is anybody can do better for the environment. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And of course, if it also has an impact on your consumer appeal, then the consumer will pay you back with purchasing.
Yeah, I've gone off video because it's just distracting. So a question from Mudassir: how can we improve the sustainability in food distribution centers?
That's a good question. A lot of the distribution centers are phasing over to more robotics, more automation, because a lot of issues there have to do with human work and difficult work conditions, people who do manual picking of products. So a lot of that's going to robotics, and they're also very efficient. So we're saving time and energy. And a lot of these distribution centers, there's a lot of work to do with the air conditioning and the lighting. That's one of the major efforts that we've seen a lot of improvement on automated lighting systems and smarter air conditioning systems. One of the impacts that we don't have an answer for yet is the footprint, the ground footprint, because these are large establishments, they take a lot of space. One of the things that robotics allow us to do is to build them higher, to make them more higher where people can't go that high, the robots can. So then so places where there's a lot of density of population, you can use a smaller footprint on the ground. That's what I can say offhand about distribution. But of course, each distribution center has their own strategy that has to be looked at based on their benchmark.
Okay, question from Abdul: how can we manage waste in a restaurant? Any tips?
Yes, restaurants are a few things that are one is the whole issue with oil. Companies should not have to throw oil out at all. All the oil from restaurants can be collected and recycled. In most countries, there are companies who will do that. That's a big impact. Also, food waste. Encouraging people to. A lot of the restaurants have eat all-you-can-eat buffets. This is a big issue on food waste. Some of the companies, restaurants that are offering that are now encouraging people to take as much food as they like. Not to, we're not trying to save money on you, but don't leave anything on your plate. I actually ate at a restaurant recently in the United States. There was an all-you-can-eat buffet, and there was a sign at the buffet that said, "You will be charged for food left on your plate," which I thought was cute. I don't think they really charged me if I did, but I like the effort, the idea. So people not eating as much as not taking more than they're going to eat, and also a lot of interesting and important initiatives for leftover food being donated to the poor, which requires logistic accompaniment. You can't just do it because we don't want poor people to become ill. We have been very, very successful in our company in putting together programs with the charity organizations that allow donation of leftover restaurant food to the poor. At the end of the day, when they close, they have people who come and collect it in a sustainable and safe manner and distribute it to the poor people in specific distribution channels. So we have a lot of success with that. That's also a good restaurant initiative.
Okay. Julie, how can we keep up with regulations around the world?
Use good consultants.
Very good answer.
Don't try to do it. It's too. I wouldn't advise trying to do it on your own. That's what they pay people to do. We have people in our company. That's all they do all day. I don't know how they do it. I admire them. I wouldn't be able to, but it's a job. Regulatory consulting is really important.
Got you. Question from Darla. Hello. Wondering if you can share some best practices in reducing water use and GHG emissions in food manufacture. Like, what is the best bang for our buck and results in greatest reduction in the quickest time frame?
Wow, that's I don't know if I can just. First of all, there's a lot of things that can be. I don't depends what the water situation is, because in some places water reduction is not currently the most important thing on the agenda anymore. It depends on the hydrological situation where you are. If water is scarce, you should be recycling and using every drop of water in the factory. So thinking about washing practices, do we use when we do a wash? Are we using the last water that's being washed to wash the first part of the washing phase? Are we using the water over again? So I don't want to be using dirty water to wash clean equipment. But if I'm doing the first wash where I'm getting off all the gook, if I can use water that's coming off of the last wash instead of using fresh water for everything, that would save a lot of water. So we have those programs in place to recycle water within the washing systems because a lot of the water is going there. That's a water saving thing. Using the rainwater and gray water for toilets, for gardening. If you have lawns and trees, and don't use fresh water for that, but use recycled water, reclaimed water. Those are water saving tips that are pretty easy to implement if you have somebody accompanying a professional who knows what they're doing. If we got to greenhouse gas emissions, there's no quick. Well, of course, the obvious is automatic shutting off of air conditioning and of lights, not having to rely on human beings to remember to turn off the lights, turn off the air conditioner. I see too many places where there's a sign saying, don't forget to turn off, don't forget to leave people alone, let them work and put in mechanisms that automatically detect presence of human beings. There's nobody there, shut off the air conditioning, shut off the lights to save electricity, which saves greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, the quickest and most important thing is to, as soon as possible, revert to renewable energy sources. So if you're in a country like our country in Israel, and you don't have photovoltaic cells on your roofs to use the sun energy for energy, then you're a criminal, in my opinion. There's no reason to use fossil fuels if you are not using the sun first. And if you have wind, use the wind. If you have sun, use the sun. The renewable energy sources are now also affordable because you'll get a return on your investment. So that's a quick one with greenhouse gas emission.
Okay, and Claudia, you've mentioned LCA, but to my best knowledge, it doesn't give a complete picture. Could you comment if a circular economy index can support a full picture of a product's environmental impact?
Okay, I am not an LCA expert. We have people who are. I've just been exposed to it because I'm involved in our business. But if we use a program called CIMAPRO, which is a very elaborate program, and it gives the most complete picture we can get. Of course, it's comparable. So it's not. So the science band is to be able to do a comparison. because it does do estimates and it does do things that are not 100% accurate, of course, like any tool, but the comparability of it is really important. So, um, in my opinion, the LCA is the best tool when you're doing a product assessment for products. Other activities of the organization is all, you can also use LCA, but it's not as classic as the product. But if you're thinking about talking about a bottle of water or a salami or a sandwich or a piece of meat, that you can do an LCA for and get very accurate results.
Okay.
And if you want more information on that, I can put you together with the LCA people around the world who that's what they do all the time.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. David, is your email in your presentation?
I don't think so.
It's all right. I'll include it in the follow-up email then, if you
I
don't
appreciate
mind.
that. I appreciate it.
Okie dokie. Right. That's brilliant, David. Great session and lots of good questions again. Really appreciate your time today. So thank you very much.
Okay, everybody have a sustainable weekend and see you the next webinar. Bye. Thank you everybody for listening. Bye bye.
Okay, thanks, David. I don't know if you can see me, everybody. I think my video's okay for now. It probably is because it's gone off. We'll follow up with the slides, recording, certificate afterwards. I'll include David's email as well. So thanks for your time today, everybody. It was a really great session. The certificate doesn't have your name on. You have to put your name on yourself. You print and sign it or open it in an image editing package and add your name there. We don't personalize them for you. You do that yourself. So slides, recording, certificate will follow up by email in a couple of hours. Thanks for your attendance today and engaging, and we'll see you on the next one. We've got a practical food safety culture training next Tuesday. So that's 4 hours, $97. So check your emails and also check the website if you would like to attend that. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Have a nice weekend.